On August 14, 2005, a devastating aviation disaster shook Europe and the world. Helios Airways Flight 522, a commercial passenger flight operated by a Boeing 737-300, crashed near the village of Grammatiko in Greece, claiming the lives of all 121 people on board, 115 passengers and 6 crew members. This tragic event remains one of the most haunting and deeply analyzed aviation accidents in history, not only because of the sheer loss of life but also due to the series of preventable errors and misunderstandings that led to the catastrophe. The flight originated from Larnaca International Airport in Cyprus, a popular tourist destination in the Mediterranean. Its final destination was Prague, Czech Republic, a city known for its historic charm and cultural significance. However, before reaching Prague, the aircraft was scheduled to make a stop at Athens International Airport in Greece, a common practice for flights connecting smaller airports to larger hubs. The passengers on board were a mix of Cypriot families, Greek tourists, and international travelers. Many were heading to Prague for vacations, business trips, or family visits. The atmosphere at Larnaca Airport that morning was typical for a summer day, busy, bustling, and filled with the excitement of travelers embarking on their journeys. Little did anyone know that this routine flight would end in unimaginable tragedy. The aircraft involved in the accident was a Boeing 737-300, a widely used and reliable model in commercial aviation. At the time of the crash, the plane was 12 years old and had accumulated approximately 37,000 flight hours. While older, the aircraft was considered airworthy and had undergone regular maintenance checks. However, the plane had experienced technical issues in the days leading up to the crash. On its previous flight from London to Larnaca, the crew reported problems with the aircraft's doors, which had frozen shut after landing. Additionally, strange noises were heard coming from the rear of the plane. These issues prompted a ground inspection by maintenance engineers. During the inspection, a pressure leak check was performed. To conduct this test without running the engines, the engineer manually switched the pressurization system to manual mode. Tragically, after completing the inspection, the engineer forgot to reset the system to automatic mode, a critical oversight that would have dire consequences. The flight departed from Larnaca at approximately 9:07 a.m. local time. The weather was clear, and conditions were ideal for flying. The crew consisted of Captain Hans-Jürgen Merten, a 59-year-old German pilot with extensive experience, and First Officer Pampos Karalambas, a 51-year-old Cypriot co-pilot. Also on board were 4 flight attendants, including Andreas Prodromou, who would later play a heroic but ultimately futile role in the tragedy. Shortly after takeoff, the pilots encountered their first major issue. A cabin pressure warning alarm activated, indicating a potential problem with the aircraft's pressurization system. Commercial aircraft typically fly at altitudes where the air is too thin for humans to breathe normally, so the cabin is pressurized to maintain a safe and comfortable environment for passengers and crew. Without proper pressurization, the oxygen levels in the cabin drop, leading to hypoxia, a condition that impairs cognitive function and eventually causes unconsciousness and death. Unfortunately, the pilots misinterpreted this critical warning. They confused it with another alarm, known as the takeoff configuration warning, which has a similar sound. The captain believed the issue was related to the aircraft's configuration rather than a pressurization failure. This misinterpretation was a fatal mistake. Instead of addressing the pressurization problem, the crew continued to climb to cruising altitude, unaware that the cabin was slowly losing oxygen. As the plane ascended, the effects of hypoxia began to take hold. The last communication with the crew occurred about 13 minutes after takeoff, when the plane had already reached an altitude of nearly 9 kilometers, equivalent to the height of Mount Everest, the world's tallest mountain. By this time, the lack of pressurization had caused the oxygen levels in the cabin to drop dangerously low. The crew and passengers were slowly losing consciousness, their ability to think and act clearly diminishing with each passing moment. Approximately 20 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft reached its cruising altitude of 10,400 meters. At this point, the plane was being controlled entirely by its autopilot system, and all attempts by air traffic control to establish contact with the crew were unsuccessful. The plane continued its flight in eerie silence, heading toward Athens. As the aircraft entered Greek airspace, it failed to initiate the standard descent procedures for landing in Athens. Instead, the autopilot began flying the plane in circular holding patterns above the Greek capital. This unusual behavior raised immediate concerns, especially given that this flight took place just 4 years after the September 11, 2001, terrorist attacks. Fearing a potential hijacking or terrorist threat, the Athens Joint Rescue Coordination Center scrambled 2 F-16 fighter jets from a nearby military base to intercept the aircraft. When the F-16 pilots approached the plane, they were met with a chilling sight. Through the cockpit windows, they observed that the captain was slumped over the controls, unconscious, with an oxygen mask dangling beside him. The co-pilot was nowhere to be seen. Moments later, the fighter jet pilots noticed movement in the cabin. A man, later identified as Andreas Prodromou, a flight attendant with some flight training, was seen attempting to regain control of the aircraft. Prodromou had managed to stay conscious by using a portable oxygen supply. He was desperately trying to steer the plane and even waved at the F-16 pilots to signal his awareness of the situation. Tragically, by this point, the plane's fate was sealed. It had run out of fuel, causing one of its engines to fail. Shortly afterward, the second engine also shut down, and the aircraft began to descend rapidly. Thanks to Prodromou's efforts, the plane avoided crashing into a populated area of Athens. Instead, it plummeted into a mountainous region near the village of Grammatiko, approximately 40 kilometers north of Athens. The crash occurred at 12:04 p.m. local time, and the impact was devastating. All 121 people on board perished instantly. The investigation into the crash revealed that the primary cause was pilot error. The failure to recognize and address the pressurization issue, combined with the ground engineer's oversight in resetting the pressurization system, created a chain of events that led to the tragedy. The autopsies of the victims later confirmed that most of the passengers were still alive at the time of the crash, but it remains unclear whether they were conscious during the final moments of the flight. The crash of Helios Airways Flight 522 serves as a stark reminder of the importance of proper communication, thorough pre-flight checks, and the critical role of cabin pressurization in aviation safety. The lessons learned from this tragedy have since led to improvements in aircraft systems, crew training, and emergency procedures to prevent similar incidents in the future. The loss of 121 lives left an indelible mark on the families of the victims, the aviation industry, and the nations of Cyprus and Greece. Memorials were erected to honor the victims, and the story of Andreas Prodromou, the flight attendant who fought valiantly to save the plane, has become a symbol of courage and selflessness in the face of overwhelming odds. This tragic accident underscores the importance of attention to detail, effective communication, and continuous learning in aviation. While the industry has made significant strides in improving safety since 2005, the memory of Helios Airways Flight 522 serves as a somber reminder of the consequences of human error and the need for constant vigilance.